Let's go. Ole Miss is getting screwed. Of the 3-loss SEC teams, I have no idea in any hemisphere, in any sport, anyone that's actually watched any of these teams play, how can you have Alabama 2 slots ahead of Ole Miss? Now, we don't have the benefit of these two teams playing head-to-head, but the main focus today is if the college football playoff were to end today, Alabama would be in over Miami. We'll talk about Miami a little bit later. But we have got a lot to get to when it comes to this very, very, very flawed process. So I understand that I have been banging the table for Ole Miss. And before the Georgia game even began, I said this is the best team I have seen in the SEC this season. And I actually still stand by that. They beat the number 5 ranked team on this poll, the Georgia Bulldogs. And they beat them worse than what Alabama did. And look, we can make so many different arguments for South Carolina and what they did versus Clemson. It's just the head-to-head is just too much to overcome. South Carolina lost to Alabama by 2, and Ole Miss in South Carolina slaughtered them 27-3. We are going to debunk a lot of different things regarding Ole Miss's resume, including their 3 losses being that big of a deal. Because it is a big deal in comparison to that of these other college football playoff teams. But when you compare it to all the other 3-loss teams that we have in this field, there is no team that deserves it more than the Rebels. So let's first start with why Ole Miss deserves to be in. The first thing is when you look overall at efficiency on both sides of the football, Ole Miss clears Alabama and South Carolina. So first off, it's just for any argument in my comment section today about South Carolina and how they ended the season, I can't really hear those out when head-to-head you got beat 27-3. I don't care if Lenore Sellers was hurt. I don't care. You lost 27-3 at home. So I'm glad the committee got that right. South Carolina does not deserve to be in the field, even though their wins are very impressive. Now, this is a problem I have when we start looking at Ole Miss in comparison to that of Alabama. I am a huge yard per play guy, and this is Chris Felicia of Fox Sports. Now, there are better stats than yards per play, such as EPA per play, offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, but yard per play is a very simple metric. How many yards do you average every time you run the play? Ole Miss, in Power 4 versus Power 4 games this season, is number 2 in all of college football in yards per play offensively at 6.6. Trailing only Miami at 7.1. But the thing that makes Ole Miss very impressive is they are also 9th in yards per play on defense. 9th. As you can see, a 6.6 yard per play mark and a defensive yard per play at 4.9 for a 1.69 yard per play differential. That is 6th in all of college football. 6th. That is pretty damn impressive. Ole Miss, 6th. So when you look at the efficiency, it's there for the Rebels. Then we go to the next topic when it comes to the college football playoff world. Ole Miss has not played a bad game. They have not played a single bad game. Let me repeat. Ole Miss has not played a single bad game. Not once have they been blown out. Do you know how hard it is to not get blown out over the course of a season? And I do believe a team like Indiana deserves to be in over Ole Miss. But Indiana's been blown out in the only game that they played anyone. Ole Miss never when they laced up their cleats, went out there and got their asses kicked. You really can't say that about most of the teams in this field. A good chunk of the teams in this field have double-digit losses where they came out and played like ass. Ole Miss, you can't really find it. Yes, the Kentucky game did not go their way. And that was a really bad loss. It was their worst loss, and it's what's costing them the college football playoff. But did you know Kentucky completed a 4th and 7 to even get in that spot? Did you know that Kentucky got a lucky fumble in the red zone to go out and win that game? And then you take a look at the Ole Miss game. Ole Miss led the entire LSU game all the way up until the final play in overtime, where Trey Harris got hurt at halftime. And then the same thing happened versus the Florida Gators. How many losses does Texas have if they have to play DJ Lagway instead of the Warner kid, the backup? Ole Miss on the road had to play a DJ Lagway Florida. I'm not the only one that has made this point. Josh Pate has made this point. Many people smarter than me have made this point, that Florida with DJ Lagway is a different team. But in all 3 of those games, they were close. They were very close. In fact, Ole Miss led in all 3 of those games. So there has not been a single game where they have not played a bad game. And then on top of that, what makes it really impressive to me is every single win that they have had this year is by double digits. So there hasn't been some terrible call that got them a victory. You can't say the same about Miami. Miami has 2 losses. And if we want to add extra context to their 2 losses, the wins that they have are miraculous comeback wins versus teams on the same level as a Kentucky or an LSU or one of the teams that Ole Miss has lost to this season. So none of Ole Miss's victories this year were by luck. They were all comfortable victories. So it took no kind of bad call in the 4th quarter for them to win. You can't say the same about Alabama, who had a lot of things go their way at the end of that South Carolina game. South Carolina, same thing could be said about them. They had a lot of things go their way in that Missouri game. Every single time Ole Miss played a college football game this year, they won by double digits. That is something. That is really something. Now, I will say, it did not help that their final game of the season versus Mississippi State wasn't all that great. I'd be the first to tell you that. But what I would also tell you is this Ole Miss offense only had 2 games this season, 2, where they had less than 6 yards per play. They only had 2 games. Do you know how hard that is? To have less than 6 yards per play, or to have more than 6 yards per play in any game. But to only have two games this entire season. So I'm going to pull up Ole Miss's schedule so the entire world can see that they are getting screwed here. And then you will also see that Ole Miss took care of business in all their non-conference games. Now, why is that relevant? Well, Ole Miss beat down Furman, beat down Middle Tennessee, beat down Wake Forest, beat down Georgia Southern. That shouldn't be celebrated, right? Well, what about a team like Alabama who struggled with South Florida? That score ended up being 42-16, but that game was very competitive midway through the 4th quarter. So you're taking a look at the full Ole Miss schedule, every game by double digits. Now, did they look the absolute prettiest in every single game? No. Do I think their quarterback, Jackson Dart, is a little overvalued? Yes. Do I think Ole Miss has their best quarterback on the bench? I do. But that does not take away that Ole Miss has the best defensive line I've seen this year in college football. Ole Miss has an amazing back 7 led by a few transfers. Ole Miss offensively has had really bad injury luck. You can argue worse injury luck than any of these teams on the bubble, with offensive linemen going down left and right and in both of their losses, losing Trey Harris at halftime. We hear it all the time from the College Football Playoff Committee. Hey, we should factor in player injury to our conversation. I am not sure if Ole Miss loses to LSU or Florida if Trey Harris does not leave the game at halftime in either one of those games. And I highly recommend you actually sit down and watch these full games. I sat down, watched a full Ole Miss and Kentucky game. I sat down and watched the full Ole Miss and LSU game. I sat down and watched the full Ole Miss and Florida game. Lucky games. And South Carolina also had some unlucky games as well when it comes to this 3-loss SEC bubble. But I keep going back to it. It's head-to-head, 27-3 in your building. All right, I just don't see a South Carolina argument that is valid other than them having some really strong wins at the end of the season. Then we get to Alabama. And the Alabama resume just keeps getting worse and worse the more I look at it. I went to the Oklahoma game, and I crap you not that the Oklahoma Sooners are the worst team in the SEC. I think they're worse than Mississippi State. And Alabama threw the game away. They threw pick sixes directly to Oklahoma. Now, did Alabama have some questionable officiating in this game versus Oklahoma? Sure. They had a touchdown wiped off the board on a controversial call. Sure. But you still got beat 24-3. You also lost to Vanderbilt. And while Vanderbilt is a good story, that is not a good loss, y'all. That is not a good loss. So I keep hearing, well, you shouldn't lose to Kentucky. Okay, sure. But Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. How good is Vanderbilt? And Alabama losing to Tennessee, who is in the playoff field. And that looks good. On paper, that looks really, really, really good. But how good is it? How good is Tennessee? I think they're a solid team. I think they're very well coached. Do I think Tennessee deserves to be in the field comfortably? I do. And I'm not just saying that because of 2 losses and a favorable schedule. But, you know, Alabama just doesn't have as many impressive wins as I feel Ole Miss does. Alabama did give up a huge lead to Georgia. Alabama did on the road at Wisconsin. That win doesn't look as good because Wisconsin fell off the rails, and Wisconsin lost their quarterback in the first quarter of that game. Alabama also had the good fortune of playing a backup quarterback for Missouri in a 34-0 win. So a lot of these metrics like game control and things like that are really misleading in favor of Alabama because Alabama had really good backup quarterback luck. Ole Miss didn't. Ole Miss had the worst quarterback luck in having to play DJ Lagway, who I think in his current form is a top 3 SEC quarterback. So I'm sorry. I just don't want to reward a team who I think lost to a bottom 3 SEC team 24-3 on primetime television. I'm sorry. Alabama does not deserve to be in over Ole Miss, but that is locked in. Ole Miss, you choked it. All right? I'm not doing this as an Ole Miss sympathy tour. If anything, I'm the furthest thing from an Ole Miss fan. Now, I will share this because anytime you do general SEC content such as this, you want to share potential biases and whatnot. I don't hate any of these 3 schools outside of Alabama. Come on. But I could argue I hate Ole Miss the worst. I really do not like them. I'm an LSU fan. Go to hell, Ole Miss. I grew up learning about the Billy Cannon game. So I have no business to stand 10 toes down for Ole Miss. But using the eye test and using the actual results of the games, using metrics like yard per play and stuff like that, I think Ole Miss is being so royally screwed. Their offense only had 2 games under 6 yards per play. 6 yards per play is a really good offensive outing. They have the best defense in the SEC, in my estimation. They beat the brakes off of the highest ranked SEC team. I think if Ole Miss and Tennessee played, Ole Miss would be favored. And also, when you look at more advanced metrics, Ole Miss efficiency-wise is better than a lot of the teams currently in the field. Now, I say all of this because I do think if Ole Miss and Indiana would play, Ole Miss would run wreck shot all over them. I think it's a good thing that they don't get in over a one-loss Big Ten team. I'm fine with that. I have changed my tune on Miami. I kind of viewed them as a two-loss team going into the Syracuse game because they had two very favorable results going their way, Virginia Tech and, of course, the Cal game, and both of those teams aren't really that good. Miami's defense is terrible. Ole Miss is elite on both sides of the football. Elite. They've got a big leg field goal kicker. Now, this might get picked up in Ole Miss circles. We're about to talk some Tennessee here in just a second. Fire in all your questions, and I'll happily get to as many as we possibly can. God, Guns, and Ammo is a Tennessee fan. Pegasus says, F. Lane Kiffin, I wish him no success. Okay. Let's switch it up some to how I feel about Tennessee. Because Tennessee, of course, you guys, man, Vol Nation, you have taken me in. I asked to join the bandwagon. And I'm here. Now, I can't call myself a VFL. I'm not going to do any of that. But I'm pulling for you. Can you believe, Tennessee, that your first ever college football playoff appearance would be on the road at Ohio State? Can you believe that? That's obviously a bad draw. I would much prefer Penn State. I would much prefer Notre Dame. I'd much prefer Indiana, of course. And then, of course, if you win that game, you got to play Oregon. But we'll see who wins between Oregon and Ohio State. Tennessee, of course, still has a path forward to hosting a college football playoff game if a few things were to go their way. So we shall see what happens. Obviously, the big result is the ACC championship game. The winner, Clemson and SMU. If Clemson wins, SMU is still in the field and Alabama is out. Crazy sequence of events. All right. Now, I want to address one more thing, and we probably won't go too long. I got another show I have to go to tonight. Excuse me. Ole Miss, 2 wins versus CFP top 15 teams. Top 10 in both scoring offense and scoring defense, excuse me. Top 15 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. 8th in ESPN FPI. 5th in average win percentage. 2nd in game control. Whew. Ole Miss fans, y'all are getting screwed, man. Y'all are getting freaking screwed. Even if, let's just say, Clemson wins and Alabama doesn't get in, there's still no reason, in my mind, for Alabama to be in. Who's Alabama's big win? Well, it's Georgia, right? Yeah, the same Georgia team you beat worse than they did. You beat them worse. Okay, outside of that, who is Alabama's best win? Well, they did go to LSU and beat down LSU while Ole Miss lost to LSU. But how good is LSU this year? Pains me to say it. I don't know. Probably not that good. We're okay. But just a bunch of flawed results here. The Vanderbilt loss just doesn't look as good as it once did. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. So, I don't know. As far as the rest of the college football playoff debate, it is interesting that a team like Penn State is in this field. And boy, lucky to beat Minnesota, lucky to beat USC. The Big Ten has just hurt so much when Michigan isn't good. Obviously, Washington fell off. But it is interesting that I think Penn State's team last year with Chop Robinson and those guys probably a little bit more talented than this year's team. And Ole Miss blew the brakes off of them. And that Ole Miss team in the Peach Bowl last year is not nearly as good as this year's team. Now, they did have Judkins in that Peach Bowl last year. But my SEC bias kind of wants to kick in and say Ole Miss should be in over Penn State. Now, that would be a little too much. But that's what you get signing up for in the SEC. Now, Ole Miss, as much as I've defended you, and I feel uncomfortable doing this, I do want to tell you, you only have yourselves to blame. You've heard it ad nauseum. And if I'm Lane Kiffin, I am reevaluating my whole thought process. How you manage a roster, how you come down to who plays in this game and who doesn't. Because not playing Ulysses Bentley versus Florida will stick with him for a very long time. Okay? But I'll also tell you that I do think with Alabama ahead of you, you should be pissed. I also think you should be pissed about Miami. I do. Now, if Miami only had one loss, I would be a little bit more in favor of them getting in. But they have two on top of two very lucky results. And, let's just take the Wake Forest game, for instance. That's a common opponent. You blew the brakes off of them from start to finish. It took Miami a real fourth quarter push to really pull away from them. Man, I've lost sympathy for the Miami cause. And the fact that Miami is ahead of Ole Miss, I think, is not right. I don't think it's right. Okay. Now, what about Alabama over Miami? Yeah, I'll put Alabama over Miami. But at this point, I would also put South Carolina over Miami. I think Miami is a very, very, very flawed playoff team. Okay, we can discuss the Virginia Tech overturn. Could have gone either way. And then the Cal targeting call. And now you have two losses to unranked teams. Georgia Tech obviously isn't as bad as their ranking says they are. They're really good, but you got beat by Syracuse. Alabama bias. So, Don, Bama should not be in the playoffs. Two bad losses at the time by unranked teams. Yeah, look, I just don't get it. Like, I think the committee really needs to look at the games and how each game actually went. And Alabama just has a lot worse performances. I just can't get over. Like, you could do the transitive property thing all you want. Ole Miss lost to LSU on the road at night in Tiger Stadium. Alabama in that same setting blew the brakes off of them. All right, so point to Alabama, correct? But here's the thing. I do think how the games are actually played matters when you're starting to split hairs over losses and game control and all of that. And look, Alabama was a team that got blown out by Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a bad team. They are bad. I was at the LSU game this weekend. LSU looked like a playoff team versus versus Oklahoma. Oklahoma could not throw. They were starting walk-ons at receiver. And they ran all over Alabama. And I know there were some bad calls in that game that should have had that game more competitive. But you still got beat 24-3. There is not a single Ole Miss game that they played this year that comes close to being as bad as that was, especially if you want to weight the college football playoff more to your current form. Now, I don't like to do that. I like to factor every single game, not quite equally when they are played. But if you want to do, well, how is a team looking right now? Well, it's not close. It's not close. Ole Miss losing a tough one versus a future NFL draft pick at quarterback on the road in the swamp is different than losing to a quarterback who can't throw and 5 walk-on receivers 24-3. Let's go to Pegasus. Remember when expansion was suggested and people were like, there won't be debate about teams 10 through 15. Yeah, this is only going to get worse. I'm anti-expansion for a lot of different reasons. But, you know, this is some of it. I don't think I would be happy at myself a year ago debating a 3-loss SEC team named Ole Miss, of all teams, to get into the field over Alabama. But here we are. We don't have morals anymore. Yeah, Dan, look, I hate Ole Miss. Go to hell, Ole Miss. I hate Ole Miss almost as much as I hate Alabama. It's I go back and forth depending on the year. I will say, outside of the Natty 1-9-12, there's never been a Bama loss that hurt me worse than Heisman Trophy Jaden Daniels losing to Jackson Dart in that 56-50 melee, whatever the score was. Ugh, that hurts my soul. Danny says Miami should be in over Alabama. Disagree. I'm off the Miami train. Off it. I know they have 2 losses, but I have to include how the games are actually played. They got 2 very favorable calls. Now, this is what a lot of South Carolina fans would say. A lot of South Carolina fans would say, well, you're doing the favorable call thing. What about South Carolina versus LSU? And I'm going to get called an LSU homer. Can someone explain to me the blatant calls that LSU got away with versus South Carolina? Yeah, there was a phantom pass interference call mixed in there that I thought was bad. I would agree with you on that. There was also a questionable intentional grounding call in that game that was not called on South Carolina, and that kept them in field goal range, and I gave him 3 points. Then Garrett Nussmeier threw the game-sealing pick 6, and South Carolina was called for a weak penalty on the pick 6 return. But the problem is that it was a penalty. It was a penalty, all right? And I'm sorry, you can't blindside the quarterback. Was it arguably the softest blindside hit you'll see? Yeah. In a perfect world, you just let that go. And South Carolina was the better team. And they had bad luck that Lenore Sellers got hurt in that game. All those things are true. And South Carolina did beat the brakes off a solid Texas A&M team. And South Carolina does probably have the best win out of any of these 3-loss SEC teams when it comes to Clemson. But as good as that win was versus Clemson, which it was a close 50-50 game and Sellers made an amazing play, if I am evaluating you based on your results, one big thing that I hold near and dear to my heart is head-to-head. Now, if you had lost a close game to Ole Miss, I could hear you out. But you didn't. You lost a close game to Alabama. I can hear you out there. But that team beat the brakes off of you. They just did. Now, in the for transparency's sakes, this happened to my team a few years ago. This literally happened to my team a few years ago in the 14 playoffs. Something similar along the line. So LSU was a two-loss LSU team, and they ended up beating Alabama. All right, so they were able to get into the SEC championship game, and this point ended up being moot because they lost to Texas A&M. That gave them 3 losses. But there was conversation of 2-loss LSU getting into the college football playoff field over Tennessee. Now, Tennessee ended up losing a second game, and then Hendon Hooker blew his ACL out. And at the time, I was, hey, division, my LSU Tigers in there. But as time moved on, and the more I thought about it, I was like, well, Tennessee did beat us head-to-head. They did come into Tiger Stadium and blow the brakes off of us. It was not close. It was not close. So I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, well, let's just say if LSU won out after the Alabama game and beat Georgia, would they have deserved to get into the field over 1-loss Tennessee, who lost to Georgia? That's why they weren't in the SEC championship game. When Tennessee went to LSU and beat the brakes off of them, it would have been a crazy scenario. But I am of the belief that blowing out another team is really hard to do. It's really hard to do. There's a lot of things that need to go in your favor. Now, blowouts aren't as impressive when the other team has their backup quarterback in, or their coach just got fired, or whatever along those lines. Ole Miss blew a lot of teams out. Okay. Oh, what's up, Bulldogs Gaming? You're a dog and a Jaguar. So are you a Southern Jaguar or a Jacksonville Jaguar fan? Tell me. Let me know. Okay, so let's go to Dan. He says, well, the Syracuse game was a close one-possession game, and the Georgia Tech loss was a close one-possession game, and Georgia Tech's a good team. So, yeah, the Syracuse losses, the Miami losses don't look as bad, all right? But here's the thing, all right? Let's just say you compare Miami to Florida. All right, if we're comparing Miami, who went into Florida and beat the brakes off of them, and then compared Ole Miss to Miami, who lost to Florida, y'all, I highly implore everyone to go watch those games. DJ Lagway, if we were to just take a look at every SEC quarterback, and we said, hey, find the 3 best throws from any quarterback in a single game. DJ Lagway, first half versus Ole Miss, was probably the best half I had seen any quarterback play, period. I mean, obviously, Milroe versus Georgia was pretty good. Nuss in the second half versus Ole Miss. There's some others mixed in there, but Miami didn't have to play Lagway. Ole Miss did. But then again, Miami went into Gainesville and blew the brakes off of them. But what about all these other games, right? Miami had a lot of these weird games where they kind of lollygagged in the first half and pulled off these impressive bulldozer comebacks where they would pull away in the fourth quarter and the score would be misleading. They had one versus Duke. They had one versus Wake Forest. It's interesting. Let's go to Jason. Yeah, it's funny to me, like, and Pegasus knows this if he's still in the chat right now. Pegasus is one of my LSU guys. And he's been with me, I think, since I've started my LSU channel. I picked Tennessee to beat LSU in Baton Rouge a few years ago. And I was already a big Heupel believer in what I saw in year one. And then when they blew LSU out, I was like, okay, this team is for real. All right. Normally, for you to blow another SEC team out, the other team needs to be ass, or you need to be very good. And sometimes it's a combination of both. Y'all, it is hard to beat teams by double digits consistently. I want you to go to bed thinking about this tonight. Every single Ole Miss win this year is by double digits. Every single one. No exceptions. Every single one. Now, are some prettier than others? Yeah, I mean, they played down to Mississippi State. They played down to Oklahoma. Do I think their offense is a little overvalued? I do. But with Trey Harris, they're elite. And that's been a changing proposition. Okay? Now, one thing I'll say as Luke fires in, I love the profile photo. That's my guy, Peyton Manning. True story. Peyton Manning showed up at my wedding. I'll tell the story. I won't share it tonight. But the college football playoff is not doing themselves any favor with Alabama bias. I'm sorry. It's just not. Like, I have a tough time watching both of these teams play and say that Alabama is better than Ole Miss. And some of that is eye test. I have a tough time saying that Alabama is better than South Carolina. I'm sorry. I just can't get there with them. I just can't. I don't see it. Oh, you're a West Virginia fan? Well, tell me what you think about Coach Brown getting fired. Bad year for coaches with the last name Brown. Neal fired, Mac fired. It's kind of weird. You know the weirdest thing, and I'll take a few more. I do have another show I have to go do. I got 2 more shows to do tonight. Yeah, Luke. I think they would now, but they lost. Yeah. They lost. And I would like to think, with all my LSU bias aside, that if one-loss Tennessee was going up against two-loss SEC champion LSU, that Tennessee would get the nod. But I don't know. We never got to that point. I am just such a sucker for head-to-head. I really am. I really, really, really am. Because I want results to matter. I do. Now, all right, Bulldogs, we appreciate you, man. Got one more thing I want to share that I think is important. Part of the problem are the conferences are just too big. They're just way too big. Like Texas and Tennessee are the only SEC teams that are comfortably into the field right now. All right, Georgia is as well. I don't include them. But Texas and Tennessee are in. Y'all, their schedules are so much easier than all these other SEC bubble teams. They are so much easier. Like, it's not even close. And and Tennessee has turned into the biggest team on this channel. I get accused of being an Arkansas fan of all teams, and I like Arkansas a lot. But Tennessee has kind of become my second team by LSU. All right, and I show love to all the SEC teams except Florida, and even then I show them love. Y'all, Tennessee and Texas are big beneficiaries of easier SEC schedules than the rest. And Texas had to go to Michigan. Tennessee got to play a not-so-great NC State team. They are big beneficiaries of a very favorable schedule. Okay, they just are. Dan, yeah, so this is channel number 2 for me. Power Hour LSU is my big one, so I'm an LSU fan. And I will be live at 8:15 Central. I'll send you the link. So, Dan, here's the thing. If I send you a special link, that means you got to show up. I'll introduce you to my wonderful community. We actually, ironically, talk quite a bit about West Virginia. Ask Pegasus this. I don't think Pegasus is in here anymore. But we talk a lot about the Geno Smith LSU games, especially in the offseason. And LSU is forever tied to West Virginia. Don't mean to bring up a sore subject, but the backyard brawl decided the first or the second national championship. All right. Let's go to YouTube Steak. I love a good steak, and I love YouTube. 2 of my favorite things. I should have had this username. My only complaint was 3 of Tennessee's SEC road games were at night. Vandy wasn't, but it would have been a home game either way. Okay, so yes, you are right. Night games do play a role, all right? And Arkansas was an extremely hostile situation. But you did have a bye week to prepare for it. You also got some backup quarterback luck when Arkansas starter Taylor Green got knocked out. But, yeah, your big victory on the season was Alabama. I do want to share one thing, though, because I've gotten some messages over my love for Josh Heupel. And my man crush for Josh Heupel is like my man crush from Arnie Slot right now. It's like my man crush for Derek Jeter. There's just some coaches and players that I just love. And Josh Heupel is my guy. All right. And it's funny. People think I really know his offense. I really think I'm still learning it. Like, his offense is so much, it's simple, yet it's complicated with all these different option routes and decisions that wide receivers have to make just based on the leverage of the DBs. All those things are very simple, yet complex options. Okay. But I wanted to end this giving Josh Heupel a lot of credit for something he gets zero credit for. But I will do it here tonight on PHL. I say PHL. Power Hour SEC. Okay. I don't have much more time. I do have another show going on AYS, my good buddy Blake Rufino's show, here in just a moment. But I will be live again tonight at 8:15 Central on Power Hour LSU. And for my Arkansas fans, I did not do a live stream yesterday. I did release an Arkansas video earlier today. And if you want to watch it, it's posted. Okay. And there's no edits. It's just me sitting here. So it's kind of like a live stream. I could not do a live stream yesterday because I had a college basketball doubleheader that I had to do, and I had a production meeting beforehand. So I want you to take a look at all of these teams. Take a look at all of them. And one thing that really stands out to me is most of these teams that are in the college football playoff field have a huge age advantage at quarterback. I know SMU has some youth at QB with Preston Stone basically out of there. The other QB's name slips my mind right now. But look at all these teams. Oregon, year 6 quarterback. Texas, multiple year starter. Georgia, multiple year starter. Indiana, Curtis O'Rourke, whatever his name is. Really good player. Multiple year starter. Transfer, but he's seasoned. Notre Dame, year 6 guy. Riley Leonard has played a lot of college football. Alabama, Jalen Milroe, multiple year starter in Alabama. Ohio State, Will Howard, multiple year starter, transfer from Kansas State. Penn State, Drew Allar, multiple year starter. Arizona State's QB his name is slipping my mind as well, also experienced. And then you take a look at first team out. Miami, Cam Ward, multiple year starter. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, 3-year starter, knows Lane Kiffin system from start to back. Y'all, it is harder to play the quarterback position in collegiate football with younger guys. So for South Carolina and Tennessee to even be here when the trend is older quarterbacks is pretty damn impressive. And one thing, and I'm not only showing Heupel love, I'm showing Shane Beamer love, even though I think Ole Miss should be in over you, is neither one of those teams have elite offensive linemen. Okay? Now, you guys know I love me some Lance Hurd. Interview Lance Hurd. I love Lance. He's not been good this year for Tennessee. He's their starting left tackle. The starting right tackle, John Campbell, has not been good for Tennessee either. So Josh Heupel, I understand his schedule has been easier. But you're telling me a year or two quarterback who has a lot of talent but has not been really that great? Nico has good PFF grades, and I think he's been good for any year 2 quarterback, but not up to the hype that we all expected him to play up to. Any Tennessee fan watching this knows that Nico has missed quite a few throws and has also had to deal with some injuries as well. Heupel has this team in the freaking playoff in the SEC. And by the way, a banner year for defensive ends in the SEC. Now, true story, Tennessee didn't have to play a lot of those because of how the schedule set up. They didn't have to play Colin Simmons at Texas and that great defensive line. He didn't have to play Braden Swinson at LSU and the South Carolina ends and the Ole Miss ends. So he got lucky with that. But Josh Heupel has still run this really fun offense, which has been very clunky, and has had the best running back in the SEC who's had fumbling issues, and he hasn't been to the playoff. It is crazy to me. Crazy to me. Now, why do I include age? Well, take a look at all these quarterbacks. So many young ones have flamed out. One of my hottest takes is Jackson Arnold. Is he bad? Yes, he's bad. But for a year or two quarterback to not have any help, it sucks. It's hard. Drew Allar has been a lot better with an extra year of experience. Cade Klubnik, terrible as a year 2 starter last year. Really good player. Josh Heupel puts lipsticks on pigs. He will make a lot of quarterbacks look good. Okay. Why do you think I constantly bang the table that he is the best coach in the SEC? Now, is he more accomplished than Kirby Smart? No. Does Kirby stuff him in a locker every time they play? Yes, I would say that 1,000 times over. And Josh Heupel will never catch Kirby's resume in my mind. But if I was starting a program from scratch in the SEC, grown up, Bobby Hill is my guy. Come after me all you want. Josh Heupel is the mother effer. He's that guy, pal. He is that guy. Yeah, he doesn't tweet cute things like some of the other coaches. So there you go. All right, y'all. This was a lot of fun. We will be live again on this channel Monday at 5 p.m. Central with our Arkansas live stream. Now, let's go to Brian. Okay. So one of my lifelong friends is actually in here, Brian. I grew up with him. We played high school soccer together in Arkansas. I'll let Casey answer if he thinks I'm a secret Arkansas fan. I am not. Okay. My closest friends would tell you that. Now, am I pro Arkansas the same way I'm pro Tennessee? Sure. Like I love Northwest Arkansas. Guess what? Every LSU fan I've told to go to Northwest Arkansas for a game, they tell me, hey, Northwest Arkansas is top 3 SEC city. Okay. But look, a lot of my LSU people think that. Look, Casey is my lifelong friend. I'm not making that up. He is one of my best friends. I guarantee you, I would be disowned if I was a secret Arkansas fan. Now, growing up around like Arkansas stuff a lot. So there you go. And Baton Rouge does clear NWA. But I've said plenty of times, I love NWA. Okay. That's true, Malachi. Oh, there you are, Malachi. Okay, so Malachi, I'm getting ready to do an LSU stream a little bit later. I hope to see you there, okay? I stripped down Malachi after a live stream. What game was it? Was it the A&M post game where I just absolutely verbally just destroyed you for no reason at all for having a Halo 3? Yes, Arkansas red backdrop with a Joe Burrow painting right here. No, I try to change the colors to the team that I'm getting ready to talk about. So I'm getting ready to do an LSU stream. This will be purple. Okay. But yeah, the closet LSU fan that just paid a lot of money for this Jaden Daniel card. I hope I didn't crack it. That's me. You got me. All my autographed Justin Jefferson and Joe Burrow cards over here. I don't know. I honestly don't think I have any Arkansas autos anymore. I gave away my KJ Jefferson, my final KJ Jefferson one. I did have a few of his. There you go. Everyone thinks that. You don't know about his KJ Jefferson jersey in the closet. Yeah, Brian, I've said that. But everybody's trying to out me as a Arkansas fan. I am not. Now, I'll tell you this. As someone who doesn't make a gazillion dollars doing YouTube, if Arkansas football wanted to hire me as an analyst, I'm right here. I'm right here. I will help Sam Pittman in his hip recovery. But yes, my number 2 SEC team, though, would probably have to be Tennessee now, though. And it's mainly because I'm a Heupel guy. I love Heupel more than I ever loved KJ Jefferson, and that's saying a lot. And I love KJ Jefferson. It is Power Hour SEC. Boom! Tonight, We're doing taco soup. Let's go.